Questions and comments. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Government House Leader.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I think it's important to emphasize to those that would be following the debate or following what it is that the Conservatives have been saying inside the chamber and outside the chamber for years now, Mr. Speaker, and that is quite simply that Canada is not broken. That, in fact, we are still the best country in the world to call home, Mr. Speaker. If you take a look in terms of interest rates compared to the rest of the world, Canada is doing exceptionally well. If you take a look at the issue of inflation compared to the rest of the world, Canada is doing exceptionally well. If you take a look at in terms of the hard jobs number, we're virtually double the number of jobs that Stephen Harper, in which the leader of the Conservative Party sat around that cabinet, more than double the number of jobs in the same time period. We have all sorts of national programs, from the school food program to a pharmacare program to a dental care program. Lots of wonderful things that are actually happening. Canada is not broken. I'm wondering if the member opposite would at the very least acknowledge that, in fact, Canada still is the very best place in the world to call home, and that, in fact, contrary to what her leader says, Canada is not broken.
For Battleford's Lloydminster.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Canada is, in my opinion, the best country in the world. We do have the best people. I go home every weekend and I speak with Canadians who have never used a food bank before that are now using a food bank, who are losing their house because they don't have a job. This government, where I'm from, has attacked our energy sector, our agriculture sector, to the point that the people that were working in these wonderful careers are now using food banks. I want to repeat something that I spoke in my speech because I don't think the member across was listening. Canada has the most indebted households in the G7, the worst housing inflation, and food prices have risen 37% faster in Canada than in the United States. Mr. Speaker, I would just ask that the member opposite actually talk to his constituents and hear what they're saying.
Questions and comments? For Caribou, Prince George.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, I love our honourable colleague. Her intervention, as always, is fantastic and to the point. She speaks from the heart, and she speaks for her constituents in her riding, Mr. Speaker. Lloydminster, that's correct. Mr. Speaker, the Honourable Parliamentary Secretary stood up and said, everything's great, but 7 million Canadians are without a doctor. 2 million Canadians are going into food banks every month. 47,000 Canadians have died from the opioid crisis in this country. That's this government's record. Scandal after scandal, corruption after corruption. Mr. Speaker, it wasn't like that 9 years ago before this government took place, and it won't be like that when Canadians elect a strong Conservative government. I wonder if our honourable colleague, just want to give her another opportunity to talk about what she hears on the doorsteps in her riding of Lloydminster. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Battleford's Lloydminster.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to my colleague for the kind words. It's just so sad, especially coming up to Christmas. I was at the grocery store on the weekend and seeing people that had to take things off of the conveyor belt to put it back. What's baffling to me and what I don't understand is, what we're debating today is the Liberal government's failure to produce documents that they were ordered to by this place, and the lengths that they would go to cover it up. Whatever's in those documents must be very damning, that they are willing to go to this extent to keep covering up the corruption and the mismanagement of taxpayer dollars, which is ultimately hurting Canadians. And as I said in my remarks, it's hurting the most vulnerable of the most vulnerable, those that are on the brink of losing their house, those that are not feeding themselves. I referred to scurvy. There's scurvy diagnoses happening in Saskatchewan, in Canada. Unacceptable.